On this episode of the Love is Black podcast, we are super excited about our guest today. We are going to be speaking to Ernest Crim III. He's a Black American history advocate who uses Black history as a tool, speaking from his personal experience with a hate crime to help students, teachers, companies, and organizations reach their potential and live a life of purpose equitably. Mr. Crim, a South Side of Chicago native and University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign alumnus, delivers his message through a variety of mediums as an international speaker, radio commentator, bestseller author, consultant, social media influencer with over 100,000 followers on TikTok, and an award-winning secondary educator who has been featured on PBS, CBS, A&E, and various other publications. Black history saved Ernest's life. What's going to save yours? This is a powerful episode that you don't want to miss, and you should definitely be taking some notes.
Agreed. This is deep. This is educational. If you're a parent, you'll definitely appreciate this. But if you're just a human being in general, history is important. And this is why you'll enjoy this episode.
So now, here's the interview.
Welcome to your favorite podcast. It is Love is Black. I'm Harvey.
And I'm Grace.
And we are talking with Ernest Crim. I'm so happy to talk to this man. Just tell us, let's get right into it. Just tell us a little something about you. I'm gonna let you tell the audience.
Sounds good. So Harvey and Carice, first of all, thank you all for having me. I appreciate it. It's always an honor to sit down and have a conversation, especially when we're sitting here promoting Black love, which I think is essential and foundational to our community. Yes. So for the listeners and viewers out there, my name is Mr. Ernest Crim III. My tagline is essentially that I'm a Black history advocate. I call myself your favorite Black history teacher for a couple reasons, because I understand that in my position as an educator, I'm probably the first and only Black history educator that a lot of my students have. And what I do on social media, I'm assuming that I'm probably the only Black history educator that a lot of the viewers have been exposed to, especially one whose expertise is Black history. Essentially, what I do is I use my platform to various mediums to educate people on the importance that Black history has in the Black community, but in America as a whole. I do that first as an educator. That's my full-time job right now, but I'm also an author. I'm also a speaker, consultant, and more recently, I guess I'm a social media influencer as well. But my main goal is just to let people know that this is the thing that can push us forward as a people and as a community. And it's not just as simple as sitting down, reading books, memorizing facts. What it boils down to is learning from our past, and our past is amazing, it's glorious. It's not something that is, oh, it's just something that happened back then. It was horrible. It was slavery. No, our people have been great for a long time. And what I want to do is just remind people of that greatness so we can replicate it and just improve on it.
Oh, goodness. I love it. Let me just tell you, the reason I was hoping to talk to you, and I was lucky enough to find you, is we have kids too. And since I'm a stay-at-home dad and school was starting, I'm like, I go to school and see these teachers, meet some people.
Yeah.
And to my surprise, to my joy, glee, my daughters have Black male teachers.
Oh,
and
amen.
That made me so happy because I've thought about it. I never had one growing up.
Yeah.
And I didn't see my first Black male teacher till college. I'm like, that's terrible that I didn't see one, and maybe one or two Black women, but I don't see me. I don't remember me when I was being taught anything. So having an opportunity to find somebody like you was amazing. So
no, it's important. I don't think people realize that we're literally just 1.7%. And that was when I got into teaching, when I saw that stat. So I'm not sure if it's gone up a little bit. Right. And with the current landscape with education, I would assume that it's either stagnant or has been decreasing, because we have, of course, a deficit with educators. People are dropping the job, people are leaving, and it's a lot going on. So I'm glad that your children have that exposure. My oldest is in third grade now, and she has not had that exposure yet. Every single one of her teachers have been white females, and that's the predominant demographic in the schools. When I went there one time and actually volunteered when she first started, the kids were looking at me in amazement, because not only was I the only Black person, Black adult in the building, but I mean, I was the only male, period, So like that presence means a lot, especially just for children, even if they have their father in their household, to have that reinforced. in another medium in a position of authority, and we just have a different perspective. We might not always teach the same. We view things differently, and it's just important overall. So I'm glad they have that exposure.
Very much so.
Fantastic. How much do you have, I guess, room in your curriculum to go far enough back that we can talk about Black history in a positive, and it doesn't start with the slave trade movement and so forth?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I teach two different courses now. One of them is it's my baby. It's my Afro Latin Studies course. This is my third year teaching it, and I've never actually taught it a full school year under a regular school format, if you can believe that, because the first year I taught it, school ended early in March of last year. And then, like the last school year, everything was virtual. So this is my first year teaching it fully in person, albeit everybody has a mask on. It's a tad bit odd. We're working through it. So what I resolved in that course when I was teaching it, because it's supposed to be set up that we get to 1865 by the end of the first semester. And I'm the only one at my school that teaches it. There's another person at another school in our district. What I found was it was just way too much information for me to start with Africa and ancient America, and then get to Columbus, the colonial era, and then get to America, and then get to the end of slavery. So I say, you know what? Instead of rushing it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend this whole first semester and then just teach kids about Africa and ancient America prior to slavery or prior to Columbus, because I think that vantage point is so important, because our kids need to know that we have been free and we have been creating our own civilizations and societies for far longer than we've been enslaved or even fighting back from the trauma of that. So with that course, again, because I'm the only one and we don't have like a common assessment, I have a lot of freedom with that. It's a class that has freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So that class is very lenient in how the design. I'm still adjusting it as we go. With my U.S. history course, now you can probably imagine that's a lot more. It's a lot stricter. Now we have freedom with the content, but in our district, the expectation is to teach kids, these SAT reading skills, because it's a junior level course. So although we can pick and choose what we want to teach, we still have to get to a certain point, and we still have to make sure we're teaching these skills. And unfortunately, most of the created curriculum that prepares kids for the SAT kind of gives you the regular story of America, and start with the founding fathers and everything. So I still do a lot of heavy lifting with. I try to spend like that first week or so talking about what African people were doing prior to Columbus. I try to focus on Native Americans and what Europe was doing. And even when we start to go to slavery, I remind my kids of these stories of African people who were literally captured as royalty. I know we say that loosely a lot, but there are people who were captured as royalty and then enslaved. So we were, doctors, we were artisans, blacksmiths, we were artists, we were royalty. And whenever I bring that up, I have to remind these kids, these people were enslaved. They are not slaves, because if they're slaves, then what happens in 1865? I don't think people realize that a lot, because when we talk about American history, we're saying, yeah, the slaves got freedom. A slave can't get free. that doesn't make sense. If you are a slave, there's no such thing as freedom. Enslaved blacks gained freedom, and now they're Black Americans or African Americans. So I just try to constantly remind my kids in that course, because that's important, because it's traumatic stuff to talk about, and it's uncomfortable sometimes. But what I do that's like near and dear to my heart is the Black Student Union. And what we talk about in that is constantly reminding them of the greatness of Black culture and how we've been able to adapt it from Africa through enslavement to our our freedom, and just fighting through these various discriminations and issues right now.
Oh my goodness. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful to hear. I love it. You mentioned something. I just wanted to jump back real quick.
Mm-hmm.
What is your stance? How do you feel about standardized tests like the ATs and ACT, stuff like that? As a Black teacher, what's your thoughts on
that? I hate it. I'm completely honest. I hate it. I detest it. Any other adjective you could think of. And maybe I'm biased, because I was a person who, I just remember even in elementary school, we had something in Illinois called the Iowa test for some reason. I'm not sure what the status of that is, but whenever you would take your test at the end of the school year, and then you would get like the grade level that you're reading at, or like doing math at, or whatever. And I remember this as far back as like third, fourth grade. So they get these kids started young. My third grader has taken about 5 tests already, you know? And I remember just always my grades were like either at grade level or slightly above. And I would always see my friends who always had like grades like, you know, maybe 2 or 3 above. And I'd be like, dang, like, what does that mean for me? You know? And I would always get really good grades, but it had me just questioning my intelligence level. And I remember when I was in high school, and I took we took the ACT at the time in Illinois. It wasn't required to take the SAT for the class for the school I wanted to go to. And I got I took the test 3 times, and I got between a 19 and a 21. And I remember like my goal was to get as close to a 30 as possible because I knew I could get a scholarship. And I kept trying and I just couldn't get to it. And again, I'm thinking to myself, is something wrong with me? My grades say this, but my test doesn't say this, right? So when I get to school, I almost flunk out after my first semester. And again, standardized tests, it just wasn't my thing. I was majoring in psychology. And I come to realize that the reason why I did not perform well is because my mind is different. And I don't mean this in a way that I've been like, you know, I haven't been diagnosed with anything, but I just know that I'm expressive, I'm artistic. I like to elaborate on things. I like to color outside of the lines. So when I took my first history course, was Black History course, and I could respond in essay format and not have to pick one of 4 answers, and that was it, I felt free. Because for me, if it's A, B, C, or D, and I see 2 that could be the same, I could explain to you why they could both be the answers, but there's only one. And that's not how life is to me. There's more nuance and gray area. My second Black History course I took was even better than the first. And I fell in love with it primarily, not just because of the professor, but every assignment that we did was a paper. We did a paper every single week, and people hated it, and I loved it. I said, this dude got us writing. If I could write a paper every week, and I guess I was doing some foreshadowing here, I said, I could write a book too. I'm just writing a paper every week. And I found so much value in that. So fast forward to now, I was an educator, and I know about like Howard Gardner's multiple intelligence theory, which says that our kids, some kids perform well sitting down, taking notes. Some kids perform well with art. Some kids perform well speaking, viewing videos. Some kids perform well with their hands, building things. If we're saying that we can only assess a student's intelligence by one way, then what we're saying is that all the other intelligence are not valid at all. And that's what we're primarily looking at. I'm not sure if you all have ever seen there's a meme that shows all these different animals, and there's like there's like a monkey, there's like a alligator, there's like a tiger, there's like a I think it's like a bird or something. And they say for our next test, we're gonna, see how well you all can climb a tree, and there's like an elephant there too, and a bunch of other crazy stuff. And it's like, but now the elephant is strong, the tiger is strong, but you're only judging it based on what one type of animal can do well. So that's my stance. And I hate it because I know teaching at a school that's primarily Hispanic and Black, that my students are highly intelligent in things that school does not test them on. And I incorporate that as much as I can in my class. But as we still stand today, most of their grade is based on the, standardized tests that we have to give collaboratively in our U.S. history course. But I think what's telling more than anything is a lot of schools are pulling away from it since last year. And I always tell my students this just to give them some inspiration and hope, because they start freaking out around testing time. I say there will never be a time in college where your professor says, I need you to read, 100 pages by our next class, which your next class might be in 2 days, right? They'll never say that has to be done in 45 minutes. Never. But when you sit down to take that test, they make you believe that you have to be able to read something fast in order to comprehend it. That's not real life.
Right.
And to me, I think that kind of encapsulates the flaw in standardized testing. It's one type of intelligence being measured, and 2, it's only on a certain time frame. Greatness doesn't happen in 45 minutes. Some people don't find out their purpose until they 40, 50. Some people find it at 15. And you're going to tell me, like, my kids love watching Young Dylan. I think he's like 12 or something. This dude has a Nickelodeon show. He raps. What is a standardized test going to tell him about what he can do? So that's kind of my stance. in so many words.
Was it just enough words? No.
It was perfect. It was perfect.
Yeah, I love that. I think that there's a lot that needs to be changed overall when it comes
Yeah.
to history and Black history teaching. But what I find that is so bothersome to my soul, so just to give you a little bit of history just about me, so he never had a Black male teacher, but I did. I grew up in a predominantly African-American neighborhood in my formative years, I guess, at least until about sixth grade. And my fifth and sixth grade years were with a Black male teacher. And we were really heavily into Black history. And that was a big thing. Black History Month, it felt like was 6 months out of the year. Like we were seriously studying and trying to understand and know Black history on multiple levels. And then my husband and I would walk into our kids' school. And I remember one time we're looking at the Black history posters on the wall and we see, you know, there's always Martin Luther King, but then there's Will Smith. And I'm like, there's something wrong about this. And no disrespect to Will Smith, at least not from me, from Harvey, multiple disrespects, but but that's not Black history to me. Like that's not anything that I was taught. I don't think any teacher at that point in time, even when I was younger, would have looked at Will Smith, who was probably on TV at the time, but and said, yes, this is Black history. Absolutely not.
So much of our history has been boiled down to the value that we could bring society in the form of entertainment. And I think that's the biggest travesty because, you know, again, I love Will Smith and everything he's accomplished, but I think that if our kids only see Will as the archetype, then we fit into that mold of only thinking that we can be a successful if we're rich, if we're famous, if we're acting, if we're rapping, you know, if we're funny. And those are all great things, but there's so much work that needs to be done in our community. And our kids have so many strengths that don't fit that mold. They aren't often shown it though. So, yeah.
So I know no one man can change anything, but how can we start to make those steps? Or in the ideal world, what would we do to start to get those things sort of implemented, like real Black history programs in schools?
Yeah, so I believe that, and I can just kind of give you so some intel from being an educator and also some intel from being an activist in the community. I started my plight, I guess you would say, as an activist outside of just teaching. In about 2016, 2017, I started going to city council meetings. And I just recall being one of the only individuals there, period, besides the press and maybe just a few people who had some standard questions that weren't really anything that was going to make your mind wander. And my question was, in my community, I live about 45 minutes from Chicago now, and I just noticed one day that there weren't that many Black-owned businesses or restaurants in a community that's like 20% Black. So I asked a question if anybody, like, you know, if there was anything being done about that, so on and so forth. And that to me got the ball rolling because when I posted the video online of me speaking, I was able to attract so many different people in the community that cared about the same thing. And to this day, we connect and network and do things like that. And I'm bringing that up because I believe that we often overlook the power of going to a school board meeting. And I've seen things change in the school I work in just with people going, for better, for worse. There have been people going to school board meetings protesting mask mandates since this summer. Their voices have been heard. One of the biggest issues I think we have as a country, regardless of our race, I just think for people who want to do what's right, we don't organize as well as people who want to do what's wrong. And granted, they don't think they're doing anything wrong, I guess, but they're definitely doing more harm than good. But they organize, these folks were picketing outside of our administrative center. They weren't even from our community, but they organized to the degree that they would go to every school in the county to say how they felt. I believe that going to these school board meetings is important because you let them know that, yeah, school board, you're over the district, but I elect you. And I show this to my kids in class all the time. I let them know like the threshold or the pyramid of power. And I say, okay, who's supposed to be at the bottom? And we say the students. And I say, who's next? We'll say like, the teachers and all the other staff. And we say then the administrators and the superintendent. And I say, who runs the superintendent? And they'll say, and I say, somebody might say, oh, the school board. And I say, oh, 7 of them, huh? Okay, then how do they get their job? And they're like, huh? They say, oh, us, right? And I say, yeah. So we go all the way back around and say, so you thought you didn't have any power, but in a year or two, y'all can elect the people who are in power. So technically, you're the most powerful people in this district. So I think it just starts with you go to the meetings and you get with a couple other couples of concerned families, and you all rotate. Whether it could be because they're difficult to make. I get it because it's like 7 o'clock in the evening, got kids and stuff. Maybe somebody hit up once a quarter, or maybe the summertime, or maybe once a month, and you just let them know every meeting what you believe is important. The reason why teachers, we have a lot of control, I guess you would say, because we have a union of people who come together and say, you have to pay us if we do this, if we do that, right? Same thing. We need a parents union of concerned parents in each district that says we want our children. We are not the ones who say ban this, ban that. No, we want our kids to learn the truth. And basically, and of course you say this in a polite way if you would like, but the ultimatum is if you all don't believe you're suitable for this, then we need to start finding somebody else who can do this. I saw in this is crazy. I saw a story. There was a teacher who was at the January 6th riots. After that, he resigned. And like a month ago, he got elected to the school board at the same place where he resigned from because he was at the January 6th riots at the Capitol. So again, he's not suitable for the class, right? But now he's one of 7 probably that can run a district because he's still thinking that I got to do what's right for my cause. And I believe that's where we often I think that's where we often are faulted at because we don't organize enough as people who are committed to equitable practices. So I think that's one of the first things. And even more importantly than that, I would say just making sure that when your kids leave your house, that they know their history, at least to the degree to where they can come to you and say, I think this teacher is not teaching me this right. When my kids get to a certain age, now it's just social studies, because sometimes social studies can be about like the geography and all that, so they don't get too deep. But I want my kids to know when you're going there, it's a potential that you're learning something that is technically propaganda. It could be to teach you a narrative. So every day we need to discuss this. And more importantly, it's great for kids to go to a public school because they need to know how that program works. Because if I'm teaching you that no, Columbus wasn't here first, and no, there were black people here doing this, and no, we always fought back, and no, Abraham Lincoln didn't free the slave. No, none of that. I want you to understand what they might be teaching you to get you to think a certain thing to maintain the status quo. So just to kind of sum that up, organize parents, go to these school board meetings, get to know the school board members, teach your kids before they leave the household so they know what to expect when they go to school, and they know how to ask respectful questions that can maybe counter what they're being told. I think those are 2 of the most important things we can do. And there are resources out there that you can even bring to administrators to let them know what should be done.
Okay. Wow.
That was a whole word.
I know. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna record that and just gonna listen to it over and over again. I feel, oh my goodness. It is obvious that you love education.
Yeah.
You're one of those teachers that
Yeah.
inspires. So my question is, did you have one? Did you have a teacher who inspired you? And tell us about that person.
Oh man. So, again, just like you, Carice, like I had black teachers. I had now general education. I probably didn't have my first black teacher till I was about 5th grade, but I had like a black music teacher. And I was going to a majority white school. I was bused. My music teacher was black. My librarian was black. So that's an important visual. She's giving us books that look like us, right? And then her son worked at the school later as a PE teacher, and we're still cool now on Facebook. So I was just like, if I got matter of fact, I got to send this to them because those 3 right there inspire me first and foremost. Then I had my 5th grade science teacher, but when I was in high school, I'm gonna give you a lot more. I can't just give you one. But Mr. Miles, my freshman year in high school, I'm going to a black school now. He was a science teacher, a black man, science, and he had to be. Maybe he was a little bit taller than because I was young at that time, but I swear he's about 6'5", 6'5" brother, and he was so cool because we're in there learning earth space science, and I understand that like he wasn't strict, like he just wanted us to learn, but he wasn't on something. You got to memorize this. It was like, no, use your notes. That's fine. He was teaching us about life. but it was like science was the backdrop of that. So that's for elementary and high school. Those were some of the most impactful educators I ever had that were Black. But the trophy, of course, goes to Professor Abdul Al-Kamat when I was in college. He's the one who tipped the scale on me wanting to be an educator. And he that was the second Black history course I took. That was the course where we wrote a paper every day. This brother was like, to me, because I loved watching Malcolm X videos, and Malcolm X is one of my top inspirations. It was as if Malcolm X was a professor. The way he was speaking in class, like it was like you said, I'm inspiring or whatever. That's what he gave that to me, and he's teaching. I had white professors, no disrespect, but I have a lot of professors who would just kind of they were just going through the motions. It seemed like they would go up there and they're reading their notes, like, and the Greek ancient Romans. And no, when Professor Abdul Al-Kamat was up there, it was like he was trying to save you. He was trying to give you he was preaching and teaching. We would come into the class, he would have, Marvin Gaye playing, Earth, Wind, and Fire. Like he just had the music playing, the dusties, the conscious hip hop. And the brother at the time had to be in his mid to late 60s. So my first inclination was like, I need to be a professor. But when I really thought about it, I was like, I don't know if I want to be in school all the way through right now. Maybe it's something I revisit, but I do want to have that impact. And I thought high school would be best because I get them right before they make that plunge to adulthood. So, and here's the craziest thing about his story. So we began to, like, I met with him outside of class. We, go grab some coffee, we talk, and he told me how he taught at the University of Toledo and just all of these great things he was doing. And I remember going home that semester and telling my mom how great this dude was. And and she just was like listening really intently. And she's like, yo, this guy sounds like someone I knew before. And she said, what is his name? I said, well, his name is Abdul Al-Kamat, but he changed his name. It used to be Gerald McWhorter. And my mom sat there with her jaw dropped, like just staring at me. And she said, Ernest, I had that same professor when I was at UIC. and it was like because I am my mom, and let me say this: when we talk about Black educators, I gotta really say my mom first, because she is an educator. She taught in CPS, Chicago Public Schools, for 30 years, was a principal too. She brought in her children from the school into our house, into church with us, took them on trips with us. So I saw that, not even knowing I would one day want to be a teacher. She never even pushed that on me, but I saw that. And now that I'm an adult now, the mannerisms, she's a preacher too. Like, I speak like her. I'm passionate like her. So we go down the same path. It's so eerie. She had him at the University of Illinois in Chicago in the 70s when they first implemented a Black history program right after the Civil Rights Movement. I had him at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign roughly 30 something years later. And it's just like, to me, it was fate at its finest. So that brother right there really did it for me. And he solidified a lot of what I was taught in my household by my mom and my dad growing up. That's generational, man. So you can't tell me we ain't important.
So beautiful.
I love it.
I do too.
I love it.
So as a teacher, obviously you inspire kids in school, but you're a teacher at home also.
Yeah.
So talk to us about how you, being an educator, teacher, affects how you deal with your children.
Oh man.
What's it like in your house with these kids teaching them?
Yeah. My wife and I, we're both educators. So I got to say that, which, is great. It's good and bad for our kids. They don't know anything else though. So that's all they know. So my wife teaches math in high school. I teach history. So you have someone who is, she wants things done a certain way, formulaic, and I'm out there. I'm expressive and everything. So we're really big, because we met in college. We're really big on our Black history. We're really big on our spirituality, and we're really big on like education and them being exposed to the right things, because we understand that education is not simply just us reading things or giving lessons, but for us, it's when we're watching TV, we're those parents that say, oh no, that's, you only 8. You can't watch this, like we're the parents where, we have our kids. This was crazy to me. So our kids would tell us that their friends have seen shows like Squid Games. I'm not sure if y'all seen Squid Games, right?
Yeah,
My oldest daughter is 8. So like for me, that's outrageous. Look, I'm at the age where, and I've seen too much real life trauma. I don't think I like to see it anymore like I used to growing up on video. So like if it's a movie and Squid Game has some really brutal scenes, I had to kind of turn my head. I don't want to see that. So like with no disrespect to anybody, that's your prerogative, that's your choice. But that's just not something that we want to expose our kids to, because we understand how malleable their brain is and how you begin to become or act out the things that you see. When our kids see a commercial and it's a superhero commercial, it's a toy commercial, they begin to jump around and imitate what they just saw. My oldest daughter now loves rapping. She wants to rap. Why? Because she watches Young Dylan. She watches that girl Lele, who's on Nickelodeon too, and they both rap. Yeah. And on Netflix, they have Karma's World, which is a show by Ludacris, the rapper from Atlanta. So you gotta watch that. And these are all positive rap songs too. They're speaking affirmations, they're speaking life into these kids. So they see that, they want to do it. What you see is what you will be. And I think that's so important for our parents to understand out there. When we do this right to the point where if we're watching, because we might watch like Shark Tank or something, or we might watch some other shows like Family Feud, and sometimes those commercials aren't geared towards kids. We got to make sure we got to watch those commercials too. These commercials, y'all, have become very suggestive sexually in a lot of other ways too. And I have an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 19-month-old. These are not things they need to be seeing. So we protect their brains, we protect their mind. Every night we're reading. Every night when I tuck them in, we're reading something. Positive Black history books. We're exposing them. Like our kids, again, oldest are 8 and 6. Like they know the word slavery. They don't know how bad it was, but they know people who fought back already. They know Harriet Tubman. They know Frederick Douglass. You know what I'm saying? They know Sojourner Truth. So I'm overloading their brain with our ability to fight back and persevere before they know how rough it actually was. For one, because they don't need to see all of that. Because my high school is they're speechless when they see certain things. But our kids have to know, and they're going to get that from the household first. And I'll give you this in closing. I was telling this story on my TikTok. I was saying how I taught a student who was like a Cal Rittenhouse before. And I had this young man probably about 6 years ago, and he was a straight A student. He did great in my class. And he would always make a remark about Obama. And it was like, it's around 2015, I believe, 2016. He would always, no matter what we're talking about, this white male student would always bring it back in to Obamacare, Obama, whatever, how much he hated it. And it sounded like he was just sitting there, just watching Fox News all day, because every talking point was something you would hear on that network or otherwise. And I understand nobody's above critiques, but it was almost like his critiques were based on vitriol and not actually wanting to learn, So I just always kind of felt like this young man, but he does great. He's polite to me. And I'm saying all this to say, after he left my class and he graduates, and I came across something on my Twitter one day with some former students of mine. They were posting an image of somebody saying something that was extremely violent. Like it was disgustingly violent, because it was around the time that the cops who killed Eric Garner, I believe, weren't going to get charged, and like the whole Mike Brown situation. So he had said something that you could not interpret any other way except it was racist, and it was like deplorable, it's horrible. I'm bringing this up because when I had the kid at 16 and he made that statement at 17, 18, the only thing I could think of was for him to feel that way and for him to be in school all day with Black and Hispanic kids. The only way he could be learning that is from somebody at home. Because as educators, we don't even have time to go that deep into stuff like that. At the most educators are just keeping things status quo. And they might sometimes say some little microaggressive things or whatever, but what they're doing primarily is keeping the balance of society, which ain't good. But I'm saying that if he comes into that class with that much hate, it's at home, it's maybe at church, it's maybe in the neighborhood. So to bring this point all the way back around again, parents, what conversations are we having with our children? What are we saying about each other and about other people who look like us? That's important too, because we're not exceptional. We are all a community. We're all a family. So if you're talking about other people that look like you, what are they going to think about blackness? My kids love when they have a fro. They love their natural hair. That's not something that I always saw growing up. You know, the conversations at home, what they see, and what you expect from them will pay dividends in the future. And hopefully they won't go down the path to become that kid that I had in my class.
Yes, it does start at home. A lot of it starts at home. Ooh, wow. You say a lot of things that I need to digest. I swear, I need like a minute. I have a question, just bringing us to a whole nother thing with Black love and you and your wife, and you met in college, and very much about the Black history. Can you kind of speak to us a little bit about the importance of the Black nuclear family or Black love in Black history?
Yeah, I believe now this is historically the foundation of our societies, of our communities, our tribal groups, our villages have always been family oriented. We are very much, and one of the reasons why I believe sometimes we're so stressed out in this society is because everything is based on individualism. It's how much do I make? How much can I make? You know, it's my what my name means. It's you know it's about becoming the next Jordan, but it's not about creating the next Bulls dynasty. And our civilizations have always been based on the family, from the nuclear family to our grandparents to us, you know, meeting up every Sunday to eat and you know and so on and so forth. So when we were enslaved, realize one of the first things they're doing is they're splitting up different tribal groups. They're forcing us to adapt a different language. They're taking our names away. And then when we're on the plantation, for one, we might get sold to a different plantation. But if we're on the same one with our family, with our wife, with our husband, we aren't able to see them throughout the entire day. So they knew that if they kept us apart, if they kept us split apart, then that means we don't have any chance at unity. It was literally illegal, y'all, for us to get together. And I'm not just talking about marriage. I'm talking like for us to be in a group and talk and converse without them around, that was illegal. They want to move, they want us to disperse, move out the way. Because what are y'all talking about? What are y'all doing? We have always been set on marriage, even when we couldn't even have it identified, even when we couldn't get the marriage license. That was one of the first things we wanted to do. We wanted to be with each other because we knew how important that was. And we didn't learn that in America. That's something that's African. That's something that's foundational to who we are. And when we gained our freedom and fought for our freedom, one of the first things we began to do was try to find our relatives and find our families, find our husbands and wives, and try to reunite. And we're not talking about Googling somebody. We're talking you're going walking day in and day out to try to find your loved one because they split y'all apart. So that's why it's interesting too when we see how, you know, sometimes single parent households have plagued our community. And that's not something that actually came from slavery. Although we were split apart, we always came back together. Many of those issues come after the civil rights movement when they introduced cocaine in the community, crack in the community. They began locking us up. This has always been one of the top agendas of those who practice racism, is to split us up. When you think about that, when there's nothing that's more powerful than when a black man and a black woman get together. When you think about all the people you see that have achieved great things in society, it's never just them. Now, again, individualism in American society, we think it's just Dr. King, but we don't see Coretta. You know, we think it's just Malcolm X. We don't see Betty. You know, we don't see like the reason they were able to persevere and to continue to push was because they had somebody right next to them. I mean, come on now, Michelle could have been Barack. Let's be real. Like she had their credentials. I mean, if you know their story, they have the same degrees, everything. Right. Like the intelligence is right there. And I know when I do what I do, like I cannot do any of this without my wife and my wife supporting. Again, you know what's powerful to me, and I'm always just like, you know, I just think back to how far I've come. And when I tell you I almost flunked out of college, around that time I met my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, and she ain't never changed. She was this, you know, beautiful young lady. She was majoring in math. And just like she is today, she had a formula. She had that formula down. She was studying every day. She was at the library. I was trying to get to know her, but she would always be at the library. I was not trying to go to the library. I didn't know, like, why do I need to go to the library? I'm in high school. I ain't do nothing. I got A's and B's. What is this? What is it? I ain't trying to read a book right now. So, but she was always there. So I had to find my way to the library. And I used to see her habits. I never had study habits. I never had to. I thought I could just look at a sheet of paper. Okay, I'm good to go. That didn't work anymore. College is a different ball game.
Yes.
So by me seeing her, and again, this is someone, you know, she's the same a year older than me. So it's not like I was looking at a big brother, big sister, but she modeled that for me. And when I got to know her, oh, you want to be an educator? She's asking me what I want to do. Like, I don't know. Like, I thought I wanted to be a psychologist. I don't know. But like seeing what she did, and then and seeing how she prioritized things, it made me a better person. And what I found out that was so powerful about how we joined together was literally our strengths. And I don't even like to say weaknesses, but I would say like our preferences of doing things combined together perfectly. Because she's the type where if we finish eating as a family, I'm like, all right, let's go sit down on the couch together. Let's just chill. She's like, oh no, we got to clean this up right now. And the balance comes in because you got to have a little bit of both. Sometimes you got to do it right then. Other times you got to just chill. And just having that partner with me as I went through college and I got my grades back up and I got my stuff together, she was always a motivation because she was doing better than me. She was doing her thing. She never steered away from that. So I'm saying all that to say, like, even when me and her, we went through this situation where we were targeted by hate crime and I began to speak out more. It was always, I began to talk and people wanted to hear from her. And she was like, no, like, I don't, that's you. That's your strength. That's what you do. That's what God has gifted you with. I'm cool over here. I'll watch the kids a little more. You know, like it's just anything that you see me do that you love, that you're proud of, is because I have that support from her, that encouragement for her, that foundation. That if I did not begin to follow her to the library in 2005, 2006, I don't know what I'd be doing right now. So again, to bring it back around, our family situation is the most important thing to our success, because when everybody says it starts at home, it starts at home. It surely does. And it starts at home with that mother and that father. And it starts at home with, sometimes my kids are asking, oh, mommy, can we? And sometimes she says no. And then when I say no, that's it, right? That it's the balance. We need both of us to be great. Our kids need to see the masculine and the feminine working together in harmony. And that's what we've always done. That's what we have to continue to push forward, moving forward.
Wow. I love it. It's a beautiful thing. That balance is important.
Man, we could talk for hours, bro.
Indeed.
As we wind down here, you mentioned, I guess, the negativity and, you know, potential hate crime stuff. Is this stuff that you kind of get into in your book?
Oh yeah, so that's the premise of my book. And I guess what's interesting about my newfound TikTok fame is a lot of people don't actually know, like, that's the reason why I guess you would say am on TikTok, because in 2016, that's been about 5.5 years now at this point. It was July of 2016, and we were at this event like 2 weeks before school was starting back. And at that point, I had not done anything publicly as a Black history advocate. It was just teaching, go home, mentor at school, go home, you know. And on the way out from this event, we wanted to play this game, and this white lady, we thought she was done using these bean bags, and we grabbed one of them, and she just began to go off on us, and that escalated to her calling us the N-word, and then she eventually spat on us. And yeah. And before she spat, I had my phone because she was calling us the N-word, and I'm just like in disbelief this is happening. And we're at the South Shore Cultural Center on the south side of Chicago, which is 99% Black. So I'm just out of my mind. This is happening. And from that day forward, we left, we posted it online. I had, again, for me, it was like, no, you're not going to treat us like this. I'm going to get justice. My kids we only had 2 at the time, 3 and 1. And I took it personal because not only am I a Black history advocate at that time, just not publicly, but my wife means the world to me. She was the one that was primarily disrespected. And I would not let you get away with this, because one day my children will see this story. They're going to come across it because it's been in the newspaper. It was on TV. and they're going to see that their father fought tooth and nail to defend their mama. And when I began to do that, people started to contact me to speak. I made a Facebook page publicly, and I just began to talk about Black history publicly. And that's kind of where I am now. Throughout that process, I had a mental breakdown, and I started writing to help me out, because it was too much, going to school, going to trial, and, dealing with the pressure of being one of like 2 or 3 Black males at that school at the time. And that was my release. So when you get this book, what you get is everything that we were talking about today. I'm modeling it for you, because I'm showing you what my mom and dad did and my grandma did to help me out. It's a prequel almost. I'm letting you know how Black history literally saved my life from my first experience with racial prejudice from the age of 6 up into that experience when I was 28 years old. And if I had not been able to channel those difficult times into learning my history, I'm going in the opposite direction. I believe that we often suffer in our community because when something tragic happens, like a hate crime or microaggressions or growing up in the hood, we don't have that history as a buffer to say it didn't happen because of you. It happened because people decided to do something that was racist and they targeted you, but you're not the problem. They are the problem for what they did. So my book, and especially for Black parents, it's a great guide to understand what you can do to help provide your children with support situations like that.
So here now, self-promote. Name of the book, where you can buy the book, how they can follow you, what you're up to now. Give us everything.
Yeah, all of that. So my book is called Black History Saved My Life, How My Viral Hate Crime Led to an Awakening. You can see it behind me right here on my wall. You can find it on my website. Is the best place to get it, ernestcrim.com, because if you get it from me there, I will sign it. I will put your name in it, all of that. So support independent Black authors, because I'm getting it, like I'm out the trunk with it, But it's also on Amazon too. If you just kind of impatient, you want to get it the next 2 days, hit up Amazon. But you can follow me on all social media websites at Mr. Crim III. So I'm at TikTok at Mr. Crim III, Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook, just not as much on Facebook, but I'm on there. I'm also on LinkedIn. You put in my full name. So I'm also available for speaking engagements, consultations, and just whatever I can do to help our community out.
You, sir, have been a blessing. It is so wonderful to have had you on this platform sharing with us. I don't even think we've gotten like a third of the stuff that we would talk about.
Oh my God, this part 1 of like an 8-part series.
Yeah, right.
I'd love to have you back another time, but thank
Definitely.
you so much for all that you have shared. I'm telling you, you are absolutely a blessing.
I appreciate you all, and let's definitely do it again, and send my wishes to your family as well.
Thank you,
Mr. Crim. I feel like I finally had a Black male teacher.
There we go.
Got one.
Got one. I'm here for you, man.
It's not only your knowledge, it's your spirit. It's the fact that you love it. You can't help but be inspired and be excited about learning.
Yeah, appreciate that, bro. Thank you so much.
I don't know. We're gonna move to you so that my kids can go to school and then you can teach them.
right. And we can set something up virtually in the meantime.
But thank you so much for your time.
We appreciate you. Y'all take care.
Yeah.
All right.
You as well. Well, Harvey, it seems that we have absolutely, without a doubt, come to the conclusion that love is, wait for it, knowledge.
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 You know what? I knew you were going to say that.
Love is many things.
But this good love is Black.